Well, I'd like to welcome everyone to this morning's webinar on what's new in Sentinel GIS. My name is Chad Mintier. I'm the project manager and product manager for Sentinel GIS. I know most of you that are on the call. We will be recording today's webinar, so if there's anyone from your organization who couldn't attend, that'll be available later. What we'll start with is just some introductions, kind of some housekeeping items about the webinar itself, and then we'll get right into demonstrations and a discussion of what's new. So first off, I guess on the webinar itself, I have everybody muted. If you have questions or think of comments as you go along, please type them into the questions section in your GoToMeeting panel. And we will have time at the end for questions and answers and any comments that you have. Basically what we'll do is kind of summarize the new features and then just demonstrate them to you. And then at the end as well, before questions and answers, I have some polls for you. Just try to get some more information from you. We have tried very hard to gather input from users on all of the Sentinel modules, and all of the enhancements that you'll be seeing basically come from your ideas and from the ideas of other users. So what I'd like to do is for Adulticiding just kind of list the ones that we've put into the software, and then show you both on the desktop and on a mobile device that I have connected. So here's the summary of the features that we've added in. Basically, in about the past 6 months or so, some of you were at the last user group meeting that we had at the AMCA meeting last spring, and there were additional things we added into the software that we discussed there. This has been since that time, basically. So we did create a spray session report that has a map, and I'll show you that. Some of you use weather stations on the trucks, and the new mountain weather stations, we did have compatibility to read data from them prior to this, but it would basically only read the weather station data at the beginning of a spray session. So we've changed that now, and the Adulticiding program will actually record the weather station data second by second along with the sprayer information. So for those of you that are using those weather stations, that's a more fully integrated solution now. We also added custom fields when you create a spray session and log in or log out. Currently you can enter the basic things like the driver's name, truck, chemical, and so on. We've added some additional places to enter information. Basically anything that we didn't already have on that form, you can now have a way to record that. I'll also show you some nice tools on the desktop for working with spray session information. So improved filter tools as well as the ability to edit spray session details on the desktop. So I'm going to switch over to ArcGIS Desktop. And the first thing I want to show you here on the desktop is the improved filter tools. So we know that if you collect sprayer data, throughout a season or over the course of a couple of seasons, you end up with lots and lots and lots of spray points on the map. And so we've had tools in our Adulticiding menu to filter this. That has already been the case, but we've improved those tools. So what I want to do is just turn off the background map here. And then in the Adulticiding menu, our filter fogger data tools have been improved quite a bit here. So we have a date range already in here, which we can change. And as we change that, it'll show me down below how many sessions have been found for that date range. I can also set other filter criteria as well. So let's say that I wanted to narrow this date range down to a particular week. So I'm going to go for the week of August 12th. So there's 4 sessions found. I can further filter by driver. So I selected a driver. Now there's only 3 sessions found. And then I can apply that filter. So now I'm looking at a much smaller amount of information. And I can look at just that spray session information for that driver for that day. So those filter tools, when I come back into the filter, it will remember the date range, and then I can set the additional filters. So I could do it for a particular piece of equipment or for a particular chemical driver user. In this example, I do not have spray routes or spray areas configured, but if I did, I could filter also by my zone or spray area, and also by a spray route if I use that functionality. So we think that will make it easier to drill down and find information for a particular spray session. Whatever the scenario is there, maybe someone has called and wants to ask about when a particular person was by their property or something like that. Okay. So the next thing that I'd like to show is the spray session report with a map. So if I go into my Generate Spray Session Report, I now have a new choice here. We had the detail and summary report before. Now I've got the ability to do a spray session report with a map. And so the way this works is that I'm going to set my date range here. I'm just going to pick one day, August 14th, for one driver. And then when I generate that report, what it will do is it will zoom to the extent of that filtered data and draw it on the map, and then it will generate a report that includes that map. So if I select the entire year of 2013, for example, I can still create this report, but what I will have is a map of the whole district with all kinds of spray data on it. So this report tends to work best with a pretty smaller subset of data, maybe from a particular day or a particular week. So it's zooming in on that area, and the reason it's taking a little longer this time is that I've got an online base map turned on, so it's taking a moment to go out and grab that information. So we think that this tool will help a lot, because a lot of our users, a lot of you that use adulticiding, have been printing a report and then printing a map, and then maybe filing that away. And so now we've got a nice simple map, and as you can see, if I have a base map turned on, however my map appears back here is how it will show up in that report. So I can make that map look as nice as I would like, turn on labels and all the rest. That's what will show up on the report. So there's my spray session detail, there's the map, and then on the next page there's the details for August 14th and this driver, and here's the details for that spray session. So that should save a few steps for those of you that are doing reports and printing maps separately. Okay, I'm going to go back to a small section of this spray session and show just kind of a minor thing with this symbology here. As you know, the symbology for the spray points is just a green triangle where the sprayer is on, and then a smaller red triangle where the sprayer is off. Well, for some time now, we have had the ability to, adulticiding actually records the direction of travel when the truck is driving. So in ArcMap, we can set the symbology to use that information in how it draws the spray points. And so that's what I want to show. If we go into the properties for the fogger log layer on the symbology page, maybe I want to change the green triangle to something else. And in this case, I'm going to search for any symbols that are arrows. So there's a few of them in here. I'm going to pick this arrow up. I'll go ahead and leave it green in color. But what I can do is I can go into the advanced settings here and select rotation. ArcGIS Desktop ArcMap has the ability to rotate a symbol based on an attribute. And my spray points have an attribute for the heading or course over ground. So if I select that option, it is using the geographic rotation style, basically 0 degrees through 360. And so then if I click OK on that, it'll take a minute to figure that out and redraw it. I may turn the base map off here just to get it to draw more quickly, but give it a second. So again, that is actually not one of our newest features, but it is one that that a lot of people probably didn't know was there. Adulticide does record the direction of travel, so sometimes that's of interest just to see which way the driver was driving. And so as we can see there, when we zoom in on this area, we can tell that the driver was driving east and then north in this particular spray session. Okay, so I'm going to turn off the base map just so that draws a little quicker. The next thing that I'd like to show you is the ability we have now to edit spray session information on the desktop. So the scenario here is, let's say that someone enters in the wrong chemical or the wrong spray area when they first create a spray session. In the past, in order to correct that mistake, it would require going in, finding the right table, opening it up, starting an edit session, and editing those details. So we've made that process a lot easier now. As you can see, the front end of this looks a lot like the map filter tools because it works the exact same way. We can set a date range, and it will tell us how many sessions it's found. We can set other filters here for a particular driver and so on. And then when we show those sessions, it will show them in a list sorted by date. And if any one of these looks like it's not correct, we can edit it, and we can change the information for that spray session. So anything that we could edit when the session was created, we can now come in and update. One place this could be useful for some people require their drivers to record weather information. The program, however, does not require it, so sometimes people skip over that. And so this is an easy way to go in and change or update that information. So we think that will help too for supervisors cleaning up that data before running final reports, for example. Okay. So the next thing I'd like to show you has to do with the other things you're seeing on the screen here, the additional fields. There's a comments field, and then there's these custom fields. And so I want to show that on the mobile device, actually, and then I'll show how it's set up. So if we start the adulticide program here on a mobile device, what we'll see when we log in is that we have some additional options now for entering information. We've had a variety of requests over the last couple of years for being able to enter things like landing counts or an odometer reading, or to enter a list of service requests that the spray was done in response to, or the ability to have a list of spray routes without having to configure a spray route layer in the map. And so that's basically what we have the ability to do now. So we can still go ahead and enter the username that we're doing fogging, which truck we're in, and which chemical we're using. But now there's a page for custom fields. And so I have configured odometer, landing count, and route. So this page will show up both when I start a new spray session and also when I end it or log off. So before I start the session, maybe I take a landing count and I can record which route I'm driving. Now this drop-down is something I configured, and it's not tied to any layer on the map. So I could have a list here of common routes without having to have a map layer that represents them now. Okay. There's also a notes page where I can enter anything else that doesn't fit into one of these kind of categories. So I would go ahead and OK that. And then the rest of it works basically the same way that I'm used to. Now, on this status screen, the only thing that's changed now, and you'll see this in the connection status area, it shows that I'm connected to a sprayer, and then there's a new icon next to it. This icon indicates whether or not I'm connected to a weather station, a New Mountain weather station. I have that option turned on, and so this status icon will display. The red X says that I'm not currently connected to the weather station, so it's looking for that connection, but it's not finding a weather station. Of course, I'm inside, so I don't have the weather station on and going. Okay, so let me end the session. When I end the session, it'll come back to this screen. I'm used to seeing this screen where it shows me how long I've been in the session and so on. Now it will come back to the custom page if I have that turned on. And so we see there's the landing count and the route that I entered before. Maybe at the end of the spray session, I would enter in the odometer reading. And I could also enter in any notes. So there's a quick list of notes, and I can type in other notes as well. Okay. And this list of notes is something that I can configure on the desktop, and I'll show you that in a moment. So we think this will give people some more flexibility in recording additional information with spray sections that up till now was not possible. So you'll notice that when I press OK, it's going to prompt me if I want to quit. That's because back here on the details screen, it's basically set to log off. So I could also start a new session and continue on with my work for the night. So let me move the mobile device out of the way, and I'll bring the desktop back up. I want to show briefly in the configuration utility how we set those things up. Okay, so there's now a custom page, and there's 5 user-defined fields. I've got 3 of them turned on: odometer, landing count, and route. And I just typed that value in there. This alias or label can be anything at all that I want. So I can have up to 5, and I can decide whether to display them on that custom page, whether or not they're required. So maybe I want route to be required, and then whether or not they use a pick list. So if I edit this pick list, here's my list of values for the route. I can add additional values in here, and so on. There's also an option to import this list from a CSV file. If this list of routes is a very long list and you've already got that entered in a spreadsheet somewhere, you can import that. So that's very flexible. It should allow you to enter basically anything else that we hopefully didn't think of, unless, of course, you have more than 5. The notes, we can create that list of notes. And really, this is just to save the driver having to type something over and over if they commonly enter the same kind of notes. Okay. And the last thing here to show in the configuration is just whether or not to record data from the New Mountain Weather Station. If I turn that off, then when I log in Adulticiding, I can still type in the wind speed, wind direction, and temperature. If I turn it on, that option now disappears from the login screen because it's going to be looking for a weather station to read data from on a second-by-second basis. I can set the COM port here, and I can also change that on the mobile device if it's different. The testing that we've done, we've used Bluetooth serial adapters, and there is a support note available for how to configure that. Another option is to use a Windows laptop or tablet to collect the data with, because it's got additional ports that can be used to read data from the weather station, including USB. Okay, so those are the main changes to the Adulticiding program. Let me come back to the presentation. And like I said, if you have questions or comments, please do put them in the questions area, and we'll talk about that at the end of the presentation. Let's move next to the larviciding enhancements. So the big changes in larviciding are that we now have the ability to record larval samples when you're doing an inspection. And that can be just to enter a sample number and take that back and use the surveillance lab tools to enter in species information. Or it will also allow you to enter a field species identification for the larval samples as well. So we'll look at that. There's also a tool now to move site details. So some of our users had points already from another system, whether that was VCMS or a database, and so when they started collecting data with Sentinel, they have all these point features, and they started collecting data, entering inspections and treatments, and then they wanted to be able to turn those point features into lines or into polygons. So if you've tried that, you know that if you create a new polygon and delete the point, that the history with the inspections and treatments isn't going to be tied to that new polygon. So that's what this tool will do. It will basically move all the details from an existing site to a new one that you create. So we'll demonstrate that in a moment. And there's also some minor report improvements which we'll show you as well. Okay, so let me go ahead and get over to the demo. We'll start this time on the mobile. This time I'm going to run the Sentinel program from my laptop. So we'll run the larviciding program here on the laptop, which, by the way, you can do as well if you have a Windows tablet. Okay, so I will log in here. Okay, let me zoom in on an existing location, and we'll select a point site and do an inspection. Okay, so the inspection is the same as always. We'll say that there's standing water. We took some dips and that there were some larvae. Okay. The activity page is the same. I don't think I have to fill anything out there, comments. But now as I arrow over there's a new tab here for larval sample. And that option is enabled in my setup, so I have this page that I can enter sample information for. So I look at my sample cup, and the sample ID is 2013-05. So you have to enter the sample number, press Create Sample. That's all that I'm actually required to do. Some users take the samples back and do all the identification in the lab. Others have their technicians do at least a field identification. So I could select that sample, and I can add a field ID. And so I can enter in the counts for larvae, pupae, or egg rafts, and then select the field species. So this species includes, or this list includes all the species, but I've also made entries here for just the genus. So let me say that I've identified 35QX and the first and second stage. I can save that and do a new ID for the same sample. Maybe I also noticed some of another species. And then I can save and close that. I can also create more than one sample for the same inspection as well. So if that's something that you do, it does support that as well. So I'll click OK, saves the inspection, and then we're back to the usual workflow. Does it require a treatment or not? I'll say yes, and I'm just going to close the treatment form for now. Okay. Do I want to review the current day's work? No. I'll go ahead and close out of this. And what I want to do is go ahead and simulate receiving that data and merging it so that we can show you how that larval sample would be processed later on. Okay, so while that's working on that, the option to take larval samples is enabled in the configuration utility now in the inspection options. The option to record larval samples is available if you also have the surveillance module. Reason being that the surveillance module has all the tools for entering in the species and abundance information and so on. So this option is available if both surveillance and larviciding are turned on. Okay. Okay, so let me next show the tools to move site details. So I'm going to find a pond feature here, which is currently a point site. And then we'll show this workflow to convert it to a polygon. We'll come back to the larval samples later when we look at the surveillance module and show you how to process that sample on the desktop. So, okay, so move site details. I'm going to find a McCammon Pond, and I'm going to zoom into it. Okay, so here we have a pond that's been recorded as a point. But when we look at this this feature with the base map turned on, we can see that there is an easily identifiable pond feature there. So maybe I want to turn this point into a polygon. So the workflow is to start editing and edit the Sentinel database. I will select the point feature. And then in larviciding, there's an option now to move site attributes. So it tells me now please select or create the site to move attributes to. I have the option then to create a new polygon and go ahead and draw in the polygon here. So I'll do that. Guess I don't have to be that careful, but might as well make it look as good as possible. It then asks me, are you sure you really want to do this? Move all the attributes from the original feature to the new one and delete the original feature. Yes. Okay, and so now as I click on this, new feature, the inspections and treatments that I recorded for the point are correctly related to this new feature now. So that's the way that that tool works, and we think that it will help anybody who wants to have polygons instead of points, or it'll also help if you have technicians who've created some duplicate sites in an area. It's a way to basically to combine them, or at least to move the information from the right one or into perhaps the right location. So that's the way that that tool works. Let me stop editing, and I will say no because I want to be able to do that again if I do this demonstration in the future. Okay, the next thing I'll show you is some report improvements, and these are fairly minor, but they're ones that have been requested by some of you. So if I go into the chemical use report, the chemical use detail report now has a couple of additional options to group or order by the site name or by the treat date. That's new, and then the equipment type is also one of the newer options. Okay. So not anything really wowing there, but it does give you some more options for creating a chemical use report limited to a certain piece of equipment or grouped by and ordered by date rather than site name. Also on the daily work report, we've added some additional filters here. The daily work report is basically a printout of anything that needs inspection or needs treatments. So we can now filter that by habitat or priority in addition to field tech and date. So if I don't filter by any kind of a date range, it's going to list out a report for me of everything that needs inspected in the database as of today. So in this particular example, that's a lot. If I set a date range, I can set that date range for a future date, so next week, next month, and generate the report. And now I get a different list. In this case, just one page. So I guess it's 5 pages, but some people aren't aware that you can do that. You can basically do a printout of inspections that are required. If you're using a zone layer, it will group that by zone, and you can actually have a separate page for each zone. So some people like to be able to hand the field technicians a hard copy as well. You can, of course, bring that list up on the handhelds, but we all know that the handheld screens are not all that large. So if you can hand someone a printout, sometimes that's preferable. And that's what this report's for. There's some new options on it. The priority option we think will be useful. Some people have used that priority list when they create sites to specify various categories for their sites. Now you have a way to use that information to generate some action lists. Okay, so those are the main things that are new in larviciding. Let's take a look next at surveillance. Okay, so surveillance has some new options. processing of the larval samples that are recorded in larviciding, and we'll show you that. There's also a couple of fairly minor enhancements, but ones that were requested when pools are tested or when other samples are tested. It's now possible to keep track of what disease it was tested for. I'll show you that. And then for those of you that do landing counts, there's now the option to record what species the landing count, what species are being found in that landing count. Okay. So let's switch over to the desktop here, and we'll take a look at processing larval samples. So if I come into surveillance and the surveillance tools or the lab tools, there will now be a new option for larval samples. Okay, and so there is the larval sample that I recorded just a few minutes ago, and it shows when it was done, when it was collected, and by whom. There's the sample ID number. And down below, there's the two ID records that I entered. Now you notice that it shows zeros here. Let me open up and edit one of these. So here's the field information, the field ID, but then here's the information that I enter in the lab. So the field tech said that they found 35 QX. Maybe when I take a count, there's actually a few more than that. And I can enter in the actual species. So maybe it's QX pipiens, and then the larval stages that are found. Okay. So same way with the other one, 1080s. Maybe I take the information, and there, isn't quite as many as that. And it's actually first through third stages. So there's my information for processing that. Also, I can add additional records. So maybe you just enter the sample number out in the field, and all of the speciation is done in the lab. Or maybe there are additional species that are found in the lab that weren't identified in the field. So it's possible for me to enter that information as well. So we think that this is one of the last big pieces of functionality in the larviciding surveillance that a lot of our users actually do, and that's to be able to keep track of those larval samples. So now I've entered my speciation and abundance information. I could go ahead and close that sample, and it disappears from my list. Because we've added that functionality into surveillance, there are now some new mosquito reports for larval abundance by zone or a larval abundance count. So if we look at that, that looks a lot like the adult count report and just shows it in kind of a chart format. And there are also tools now in the generate map data to generate map layers for larval abundance information. So if I do all species and generate a map layer, then what it will do is it will show me, of course I only have a couple of samples, but it will show me a map layer that represents that. So I only have one place, and I've only taken one sample, so it's not highly interesting right now, but we do have those same report and map data generation tools for the larval samples that we have for adult counts. Okay. Let me switch over to the mobile for just a moment, and we can show you, while doing a landing count, the new ability to record the species for the landing count. So I've got just one landing count site. Here, if I select that landing count site and do a survey on it, I can enter in my weather information and start the timer, do my counts, but I now also have a species page. And so this species list is the same one that shows up in surveillance. Maybe I'm finding QX and Anopheles. Okay. And so then I could go ahead and enter in my total counts. So again, for those of you that use the landing count, not everybody does, but those that do seem to use it a lot. This was one of the things that was most requested. So we had a lot. And then lastly, in the surveillance tools on the desktop, there is the ability now to keep track of what disease was tested for. So if I choose an adult trap record here that already has species and abundance information and lab results for the pools, I can see that I now have the ability to record that it was tested for West Nile and whatever else, and there were no positives found, but this is something that people had been asking for as well. The same is true for other sample types, whether it's blood samples or specimen samples. Okay, so that is it for surveillance. Let's take a look at the last one, which is service request. So for service request, we now have the ability to create a new request in the field. We also have the ability to process a request in the field before the device is synced. So we'll show you a couple scenarios there and talk a little bit more about that. And then improved search filters. Some of these were done when we had our user group meeting at AMCA, and some weren't done yet. So let's take a look at those first. The service request filter tools on the desktop were done or mostly finished, at least at that time. So we can filter by some additional things here, all of the non-closed ones or just the ones that are pending review. And we see that the tree refreshes here, the list of service requests refreshes there. I can select a group of service requests and I can reassign them to a different employee or mark them all as closed. And I can also search by some additional options here. So I can display, let's say, by last name or by address. I can also search by those things as well. So if I search for Bush, and it finds the request for Bush Lane. I can also do partial searches, so a last name that contains the letter L. There's 5 different ones there, and I can cycle through them. So some additional options for finding requests here on the desktop. The same is also true for on the web applications. So let me bring the web application up and we'll take a look at those. Okay, so that's just loading. Okay, so similarly we can search by name, phone number, and so on, as well as now address, city, zip code, and field tech, supervisor, and target. So we have some additional options here now that we didn't have before. Okay. Let's take a look at the options to create a new request in the field. Previously, it was required that you would create the request in the web application and then synchronize the mobile device in order to get that information on on the mobile. So now we have the option to create the request in the field. So we'll show you that first. I'll log into Larviciding, and service request is displayed in Larviciding for me. Okay, so I'll go to my service request page. There's a new tool to create a new request right from this toolbar, or I can open up my service request list, and I see the ones that are assigned to me or the ones that are open for my zone, or I can just go to new request. So if I create a new request, I can enter in information for the basics of the request. And when I click OK, the request is created, or I could go ahead and add some field notes right here. If I click OK to create the request, now that shows up over here in my assigned list as a new request, and I could go ahead and do the rest of the things I normally would do with that request. I can enter in notes for it. Do I want to close it? I won't close it just yet. I can go ahead and enter a treatment for it if I so choose, so I can work with it just as I could with any other request. So that opens up some options then. If your technicians come across something while in the field that they are allowed to respond to, here's a way to keep track of that as a service request without having to enter it in the office and then synchronize the device. One other workflow along the same lines would be if the technician's already out in the field and someone gets a new request in the office and enters it in. So we'll go ahead and enter in a high priority request. For something. Okay. So this request, when it's saved, generates a service request ID number, number 16. Well, if my field technician's already out in the field, I've already entered information for this request, but they don't have it on their handheld. So there is an option here to go to the new request page and enter in that I want to record notes for request number 16. So someone calls on the radio or sends a text or calls them on their phone and says, hey, can you go to this address? The request number is number 16. Now they have a way to record what they did there. And so let's say that they went ahead and did a larviciding treatment. Okay. So back on the assign page, here's the new request that they just did. That's number 16. And I can look at the details to verify that. This is the one I just created. And there's no other information on it except its location and the date and time it was created by the person that's logged in, which happens to be David Herder. So I could record the treatment. Okay. And then I could go ahead and complete it. Okay. And that closes it out. So what will happen then is the information from the field will be combined with the information that was already entered in the office. And so let's go ahead and close out of service request here. Receive that information and merge it in. So I think that gives some more flexibility to how service request is used. It's not always possible for people to synchronize their device every single day, and service requests sometimes are higher priority, so there has to be workflows to support that, and now there are. So happy about that. So we'll let that merge. And then back here in the service request module, number 16 is now pending review. If I open that up, there's the information from the field combined with the stuff that I put in the office for that request. Okay, so let's get back into what's left of the presentation. Upcoming, we have sent out a survey to all of our current users asking for further ideas for future features. Please fill those polls out if you've already received them, or feel free to just email or call me with any additional ideas. A couple of things that we're considering and asking for some input on is ways to possibly integrate Sentinel information with ArcGIS Online. Some of you have used that, but it's a really nice way to share information with people outside of your organization, or possibly with the public through web maps. We're also considering ways in which we can collect some information or edit some information using smartphones. So maybe service request information, being able to give technicians the ability to see and edit information about service requests on their phones. So there's some options around that. And then, of course, just any other feature requests having to do with the existing functionality. So before we turn it over to questions and answers, I do have a couple of polls I would like you to weigh in on. Let me launch the first one here, very simple poll, and that is, are you looking to replace any old mobile devices this off-season? I'm trying to kind of get a feel for what people are looking at. So go ahead and weigh in on that. Simple yes, no. We do have some more options these days for Windows tablets, and then Juniper has a new Archer 2 and some other things, so some nice options for that. Okay, so it looks like almost everybody has voted on that. And please, if you have any questions about the devices, feel free to ask me or Ryan about that, and we'll be happy to share with you. Okay, so let me close that poll. One poll that I'm more interested in, probably more so than anyone, is what other devices are you interested in running Sentinel on or collecting data on in the field? Currently, it's Windows or Windows mobile devices, but we definitely are aware of the fact that there are a lot of other device types running around out there. And so we're just curious what it is that you might be interested in collecting data on. Okay, looks like quite a few people iPhone or iPad, some Windows tablet, a couple Windows Phone, and some other. And for other, whoever voted other, send me a chat with what the other is, if you wouldn't mind, or at the end, go ahead and bring it back up. Okay, close that poll. Got a couple others. Next one is, are you looking to add any Sentinel modules that you don't already have? A lot of people have larviciding or adulticiding or both of those. Not as many people have service request or surveillance. So if you are interested in looking at those other modules, please let us know. A lot of times we have the ability to install it for you and let you try it out as well, and see what you think before you fully commit. So again, any of you who are answering yes, if you want to follow up later, Ryan and I can both be available to help you out with that information about that. Okay, so it looks like most people have voted on that. Appreciate it. Okay. Next question is more of a kind of a support question, really. Everything that we've shown you is available in our latest Sentinel GIS patch installer, and so if you need any help upgrading either Sentinel or ArcGIS, some of you are still using ArcGIS 10.0, maybe 10.1. 10.2 is available. We can help with any of those upgrades, and you can contact me or Roger throughout the off season. And of course, this, sooner the better on all of that. We can help you get it all taken care of long before your next field season really starts. Just on the subject of the latest patch installer, that's available on our Elect Data web store. So if you go to our main page and click on Downloads, the Sentinel GIS software patch installer is available there with instructions. If you need some help with that, please do just contact me or Roger. Okay. One other question in a similar vein, while the relative downtime is occurring for most people, would you like any help to create a report or create a map book or share your data online or anything like that? We do have a list of GIS services that are available to customers, to users. So if you'd like any help with some of that, some of that help is basically just tech support. And some of them, if you want something more involved, we have little service packages available where we can help you with those things. So get anyone who's answering yes, so let's make sure, and we'll follow up with you afterwards. So now's the fun time of year where you get to crunch all the data you've collected all year, right? So okay, it looks like most people have voted on that, and I just have one last poll here for you, and that is, would you like to know more about ArcGIS Online? You may have heard it mentioned a time or two by me or perhaps by Ryan or on Esri's emails or website. So if you'd like to know more about it, we'd like to follow up and either have another webinar or just have some one-on-one time with you about that. Like I said, it's a pretty neat way to share information inside and outside your organization, and something that's fairly new from Esri is that every desktop user is entitled to an ArcGIS Online subscription with one user per desktop license. So there are ways to get in and have a look at that functionality basically without spending any additional money and maybe just spending a little bit of time. Okay, so everyone's voted on that. Appreciate that. So that's it for the polls. Let me go ahead and just open it up for questions. I'll unmute the line. Let me see if there's any questions first that came in while we were talking, and I'll answer those before I unmute the line. And we'll go from there. So one question is, what is needed to connect the NM150 weather station? What's needed is basically to mount the weather station on the truck, which it comes with things to do that, and a power supply to the weather station itself, which it comes with those cables. If you're using a Windows tablet, you can connect the weather station to the Windows tablet via USB. If you're using an Archer or a Nomad or another Windows mobile device, there's only one physical serial port on there, so what's needed is a Bluetooth serial adapter. And our tech note, our support note on that subject talks about the Bluetooth serial adapters that we've tested and that we would feel comfortable working with. So the weather station would be sending data via Bluetooth, and then the sprayer would be still plugged in with the cable. So we think that it might work better with a Windows tablet. just because of Bluetooth connections, those of you who have worked with them, there's interference and other issues, configurations. So it should work pretty well, but we all know that if you have something that has to be configured and communicates wirelessly like Bluetooth, it's not always 100%. So I can send that support note to you. I think, yeah, Kevin asked that question, so I'll make sure and get that to you, Kevin. Okay, let me go ahead and unfill. So everyone is unmuted. If anyone has additional questions, please feel free to ask. Okay, it doesn't sound like there's additional questions right now.
Okay.
I went ahead and muted everyone again just so we didn't get the cross noise and so on. If you do
Muted.
questions, please feel free to email me or give me a call. And anyone that asks for additional information or help will follow up with you in the next days and weeks to make sure that you get what you need. So sure appreciate you attending. Thank you for taking the time to do so, and we definitely appreciate your continued use of Sentinel, your great ideas, and we'll continue to do what we can to improve the products and help you do your jobs that much better. So thanks a lot. Have a good one.